Well, my next guest is another victim of Joe Biden's hyper-politicized Justice Department. His story is going to shock you. Paul Vaughn is a devout Christian, husband, father of 11 children, and he's devoted much of his life to pro-life activism. He and 6 other pro-life people were charged with 2 felony counts. That's right, felony counts because of a prayerful demonstration outside an abortion clinic nearly 3 years ago, right here in the Nashville area. What were their crimes? I'll tell you what they were. They prayed and they sang. I bet you didn't realize that that could be a federal felony in today's crazy America. Since that time, Paul has been dragged away from his home by FBI agents and convicted of those federal charges, praying and singing. He now faces the possibility of 11 years in prison for this supposed crime. So while he awaits sentencing in July, his legal team is working overtime to appeal this conviction and fight the administration's virulent persecution of Christians who are defending life. I want you to give a warm welcome to Personhood Tennessee President Paul Vaughn and his attorney Steve Crampton, Senior Counsel at the Thomas More Society. Please welcome them. Only ever once in a while does a case just shock me, but this one does. And Paul, I want to start with you. You've been a long time peaceful protester at abortion clinics because you believe every human life matters. I mean, it's kind of that simple, isn't it?
Pretty straightforward. God says children are a blessing.
Well, you must think so. You got 11 of them.
That's right.
When I heard about your case, I wasn't just stunned. I was shocked to my toes because I said, people don't get really arrested and charged with a felony. They may get charged with a misdemeanor. They may be charged with disrupting the peace. But you were charged under a federal law called the FACE Act. And it's basically to say that you can't disrupt anything at an abortion clinic. Do you have any idea that this was about to turn into the absolute nightmare that it has become?
No, I didn't at all. As a matter of fact, we were expecting our 11th child during, the due date was 5 days after this event. And having grown up in the pro-life movement, and my wife and family working, like you said, out on the front lines for a lot of years, FACE was passed back in '94.
Yeah.
We knew about FACE, and we knew the rules and the requirements and what we could do and couldn't do. So I was very careful that day to stay within the lines and not get myself in trouble with my wife and not be there for the 11th child.
So did you hit anybody?
Never hit anyone.
Did you scream at anyone?
Never screamed at anyone.
So what exactly were you doing at that clinic entrance?
Well, I knelt very peacefully and prayed. I read my Bible. And when the police came down the hall and I realized they didn't understand what was going on, I went back to them and talked with them. And I spent the better part of the day, probably 45 minutes to an hour and 15, something like that, talking and ministering to police officers, talking about civil magistrates and Romans 13 and what the police officers' duties were. And
were you arrested right then and there?
Did not get arrested that day, didn't get charged, had nothing, no foul that day. Matter of fact, I helped the police detectives find the youth that were there and get them back to their parents and after some were arrested. And so interacted, had a great relationship with the police officers. They even testified on the evening news what a peaceful group we were.
Well, you were so peaceful that the federal agents came after you at your home early one morning. What time of day did they show up?
They were less peaceful. It was 7:15 in the morning.
And they came with a full SWAT team, fully armed?
Full SWAT team, fully armed, armored vest, sidearms, long guns, the whole deal.
And they were just after you. So how many police officers came to your home at 7:15 in the morning?
So they had 2 cars, four officers, and banging on the door, open up, FBI. I had children outside in the yard, getting ready to take them to school, and trying to figure out. It's one of those discontent moments in your life where you're going, I thought he said FBI.
Yeah.
But that doesn't compute. Somebody leave the TV on from the bad drama the night before or something.
So the FBI, they come to your house early in the morning. They arrest you in front of your children.
Correct.
They put handcuffs on you and stuff you into a police car, and they will not answer the questions that your wife is posing. Why are you taking my husband away?
That's correct.
And they said, we don't have to answer. I've seen it.
Yep. No, I asked under whose authority as I turned around to surrender myself to keep my children safe. The young guy with the attitude puffs his chest out and taps on his FBI Velcro badge and says, "This is all the identification you get." And so for 6 hours, I was taken away. My children didn't know. My wife didn't know. My church friends and family, pastor, not my mayor, not my representative, not my governor, nobody in the state of Tennessee, not my sheriff, knew where I was for 6 hours.
The local police could have contacted you if the FBI wanted you. Heck, they could have contacted you and said, come down to our office at the federal building at 9 o'clock Monday morning. We want to chat with you. They didn't do that.
They did not.
No announcement. They just came to your home unannounced and unexpectedly and hauled you off.
That's correct. Business owner in a small town, been there for 15 years, owned a business there for 11 years. There's no reason for the aggressive interaction with them. They could have easily called, like you said, but they chose not to.
By the way, Mike, this was a year and a half after the event.
A year and a half.
So Paul couldn't really connect the dots as to why they were there.
Yeah, I mean, I would think after a year and a half, you think, well, whatever that was, it's over. So who instigated this level of attempt? Steve, there's got to be something. How does it last that long and then suddenly you get a SWAT team at your door?
Here's the dirty little secret, Mike. This event occurred in March of 2021.
Okay.
Little Supreme Court case, Dobbs against Jackson Women's Health Organization, occurred June 2022, right? Reverses Roe against Wade. Basically, the Biden administration declared war on pro-lifers at that point. And so all of these, this is one of several criminal face cases brought during that time frame. And the first time in the history of face that they threw in the criminal conspiracy charge, tagging on that felony 10-year penalty too. So it's really a conspiracy to engage in peaceful civil disobedience, which has never been done in this country
People
before.
burned buildings down.
Yes.
Burned federal buildings, torched police cars in Minneapolis and Portland and cities across America.
Yes.
And nobody to this day has been arrested for some of that.
Hope Clinic right here in Nashville also. And here's the dirty little secret about that. The FACE Act protects not only abortion clinics, but crisis pregnancy centers, churches, et cetera. And so it's open season on the churches and the conservative Christians on both sides, and no one being prosecuted for committing those violent crimes against the churches.
If it weren't for organizations like Thomas More Society and other legal aid groups that come to the defense of people like Paul, Paul's case would probably have been buried and he would already be in the slammer. I mean, they're trying to go after him for 11 years. 11 years, because he sang and prayed.
Yes.
It sounds like, there's got to be more to this, but that honestly is what's going on.
One thing about that, there's got to be more to this. I would have thought the same thing in your position. You hear about this and you go, surely there's something they're not telling us. Actually, this event was live streamed on Facebook Live by 3 different individuals participating. Number one, what criminal live streams his felony crime? Number 2, the government wouldn't allow us to play that whole video at the trial. They didn't want that thing to be seen.
How can they keep that from being played? It's part of your defense.
Technical rules of evidence, you know.
Paul, have you ever committed crimes before?
No.
You ever beaten up anybody ever?
No.
Have you ever stolen anything from?
No.
You ever done any tax evasion or any bad stuff?
No.
You should have done those things because you wouldn't have served any time. You see, you really messed up, Paul. If you had just been violent and beaten up a cop in the streets of New York, he'd be out in 3 hours. You served longer just waiting to talk to an attorney than those thugs did beating up a cop on the streets of New York with a camera rolling. I'm just stunned by this. But Steve, here's what I hope our audience will understand. This is not about Paul Vaughn. It is about him.
Sure.
This is about the rest of us. If they can do this to him, who's not possibly going to have this kind of problem?
I think that's exactly right, Mike. It seems to me America's founded, A, on peaceful civil disobedience, B, the equal protection under law. That's inscribed over the U.S. Supreme Court entrance, right? And what we have today is a 2-tiered system of justice. Everybody knows it. If you've got a D after your name, if you're not affiliated with President Trump, and you're not a, quote, election denier, and if you're not pro-life, you get one set of rules. And if you fall into any of those discrete categories, all of a sudden, Katie, bar the door.
I'm stunned, but I think the next question, what can we do now? How can we help? Because I think I can't imagine anyone in our viewing audience that is not outraged by this, but that also says, here am I, Lord, what can I do?
You're here.
What can I do?
Sure.
First thing you got to do is pray, right? The jury, the judge, the prosecutors, everybody's made up of Americans. And our cultural character is amiss. We need to examine our own selves, our own heart. We need to examine our churches, and we need to be praying and seeking God for this nation. Those that are called by my name, they'll humble themselves, seek God and pray, then he will heal our land.
This is under appeal. Steve, what's the steps of that? When it happens this summer?
Yeah, we actually can't commence our briefing and so forth until after the sentencing, which, as you mentioned, is early July.
Yeah.
We'll go up to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals in Cincinnati, and if need be, to the U.S. Supreme Court. We believe FACE is unconstitutional. There is a move on, and one other thing that folks can do is contact their congressional delegations.
Good.
Both houses of Congress have introduced bills to repeal FACE. It ought to be killed on its tracks right now. And if not, we think we can get it declared unconstitutional. But there's a lot of work to be done ahead.
But it's got to go all the way to the Supreme Court for that
Yes,
to happen. Gentlemen, make a promise to me. Please come back, give us an update on the case, because we want to share with America what's happening to you. And I want to ask all of our audience, don't let these guys stand by themselves. For more information on the Personhood Alliance and the work they're doing around the country, which is not criminal, please go to our website, Huckabee.tv. We will connect you to them. Also, the Thomas More Society, thank God for them. Without them, Paul would just be out there dangling in the wind, and there would be no legal representation that he would likely be able to afford for a case of this magnitude. So it's important for us to help organizations like the Thomas More Society. You can become affiliate of Personhood Alliance as well, help restore legal protections for every human being. We've got all the information, Huckabee.tv. And don't forget, pray for Paul Vaughn and his family as they fight this incredible injustice of the legal system. Hey, Mike Huckabee here. Listen, if you love your mom, apple pie, and being conservative, you know you ought to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and click the like button, and show all the leftists out there that conservatives are thriving and patriotism is far from dead. Am I pandering too much? No way. I'm just getting started.